Hello, welcome to College Aid Night at Noon. It's January 23rd, 2025. My name is Stephanie Hancock. I am the founder of College Aid Works, a financial aid consulting firm in California, and I am your host for this live stream. I've created the live stream as a hopefully helpful way for families to figure out what they need to know about financial aid, as well as to help guide you through the process a little bit. Thanks for joining me. Let's get started because today I said what I was going to talk about I'm just going to answer a bunch of financial aid questions. And they're not just, where does this go on the FAFSA form? Because in December, I did a complete walkthrough of the FAFSA. So this is not what today is going to be. What today is going to be is me answering a disparate collection of questions that come through my office on a frequent basis that are so common that when people start the question, already know where they're going with it and have to sometimes bite my tongue and wait for them, show courtesy, and wait for them to answer the question, ask their question before I answer it. So what I'm doing is I'm recording this. It'll be eventually available on my website, as well as you can get copies of the FAQs with the answers if you are on my mailing list. So a good reason to join my mailing list. Okay, so let's get started. The first question is, I have money saved for retirement, but it's not in a retirement account. Do I have to list it on FAFSA? Okay, yes. So first we're going to cut to the chase. Here's the answer. The brutal live answer is yes, you do. And here's why. Because certain assets are shielded and it's retirement accounts, right? If it's 401k, IRA, Roth IRA, 403b, Simple IRA, SEP IRA, KEO, 457 pension, those are specifically designated for retirement. And so they are shielded in the financial aid formulas. But I understand where people are coming from. Sometimes I get the person who says, you know what, my career has been kind of up and down and I haven't really been able to save in a significant way for retirement. So what I'd like to do is use this inheritance that I just received to shore up that shortage. Or, you know what? I decided I didn't want to invest in the stock market. I want to buy real estate. And so I have rental properties that I'm going to expect to use the income from those, the rents, to pay my retirement expenses. Okay, good options, understandable, but they're not shielded from the formula. So you do have to consider that. Another thing that kind of is a tag along with this is families will say to me, you know what? I've got an elderly parent and my name is on all of their bank accounts and their investment accounts. Do I have to count that? And the short answer is yes. 50%, right? If it's just the two of us and we're joint owners, the law assumes that I own 50%, and I do in that. I could walk into the bank and request a distribution, take out a withdraw money. I could do that. And the other person wouldn't have recourse. Even though my mom and I, my dad and I have a mutual respect and understanding that this money is their money and meant for their medical or, elder care or whatever they want to do. How do I prove that? So it's got to go on the financial aid form. Sorry. Okay. My student aid index, the SAI, is really high. So do they just expect me to Sorry, I don't know what happened with that. I'm having all kinds of technical difficulties today. My student aid index, SAI, is really high. So do they just expect me to sell my house? Is that the deal? No. The real deal is they don't care. They want to help families make it affordable to come to school, right? That's why they award financial aid. But they don't care if you sell your house, if you mortgage your house, if you get money from grandparents, if you sell a kidney, which is illegal. They don't care if you, you know, have saved the money. They don't care how you come up with the money. They just want to pay you. It's not their job to care, right? So it's not personal. That's the thing, is we tend to take it personally when the schools tells us what they expect us to pay, or when we see that SAI when the FAFSA gets submitted. But it's not personal. It's just, these are the numbers. Okay, what are the deadlines for applying for financial aid? This is a great question because it's essential that you apply by the deadlines. Otherwise, you could end up out of luck in terms of qualifying and obtaining, receiving financial aid. So the deadlines are going to vary. There are 3 different deadlines. There's a deadline to submit a FAFSA to the Department of Education. That's June 30th of the following year. Excuse me. So when the financial aid form opens, this year it opened in December of 24. And I have until June of 2025 to submit FAFSA for the 25-26 school year. And I probably have that even bogged down. Actually, no, I have until 26. Okay, but you get my point. So June 30th is the deadline. And then, then I have my state aid deadline, which could be in California, March 2nd. Other states, it might be March 1st. It could be February 28th. You got to check with your state. And then you have the school's own deadline. And the school's deadline is going to be whatever they've decided they want it to be, right? So in California, the State Aid Commission's deadline is March 2nd. However, some colleges like USC, they have a February 13th deadline to apply for financial aid. So the important thing to do is to check with the college. Go to their website. Dig deep if you have to, because sometimes it's not immediately obvious, but get that information. And if you still are having difficulty determining what the deadline is, just contact the financial aid office. Admissions might know too. But you tell them, I've got a student who's a high school student and they applied early action, early decision, early or regular admissions, or my student is a transfer student. What's the deadline for financial aid? All right. Someone, the famous someone and they, I said in a previous live stream that someone and they give lots of information, and a lot of times it's not to be relied upon, especially when it comes to financial aid. That's what I've seen in my years doing this. But someone said I have to apply for financial aid as soon as it opens, and sometimes they'll say, or they're not going to be any more. Is that true? Well, I would say it depends. It really depends. There are a few programs that have such limited funds that if you aren't one of the first ones applying, it may have run out. But in most cases, if you apply by the priority deadline set by the college, they will consider you for all aid available and you'll get full consideration. What you don't want to do, I think some of this is a little bit true, but what you don't want to do is you don't want to be late. Now, the form opened December 1st. It's January 23rd. It's been open a good amount of time. Go on and get it done. Don't procrastinate any longer, but don't freak out or panic because you didn't do it on December 1st or December 2nd when the form became available. All right. There's enough to stress about in this process. We don't need to add additional stress. All right. How do I get a student loan? And this one comes off because sometimes people think they don't realize it's as comprehensive. The financial aid forms are as comprehensive as they are. So they think, okay, how do I get the federal grant money? And I got to run over here and I got to do this to get the loan. And I got to go over here to get the school's money. And I got to do this to get the state money. When really it's very comprehensive in that I can get federal consideration for federal, state, and institutional funds just by filling out some simple form like the FAFSA. That's for the majority of the schools. Others will also want another form, either their own or the CSS financial aid profile form from the College Board site. But if I fill out a FAFSA and that's the only form a school said they wanted, that means I'm going to get consideration for federal aid, for the institutional aid, and for the state aid if I also meet whatever requirement the state may have had. But how do I get a student loan? You got to do the FAFSA. And that's the federal student loan. Other loans outside of that in the marketplace, you're going to have to do a loan like to the bank or the credit union, and that'll be a little different process. But a student loan, boom, you can just get that. And anyone can get it. I've had clients with incomes of over $500,000 a year do the FAFSA solely because they wanted their student to have skin in the game, right? And the student got the financial aid. They got the student loan awarded to them. Okay, what are most families doing? The origin of this question, I think, is I see people, I talk to them, I show them what their numbers might be and what they are thinking. I see it, they're got like a scrunchy look on their face, like, like trying to figure out. And they're thinking, well, the person I live next door to, their kids are in college, or my cousins, they paid for their kids to go to college. And I know they don't have that much money, or they do, or whatever. How did they do it? Well, my first thing is ignore what other people are doing, because as my mother would say, if they jump off a bridge, are you going to jump off a bridge too? Right? No. Some people are going into lots of debt and regret it later. Some people are going into lots of debt and they don't regret it. Other people have family that's helping them. Some have saved. Some don't have as much money and assets as maybe you think they do, and therefore qualify for financial aid. And then there are people that don't qualify for need-based financial aid who choose to pick colleges that are going to be more generous to their student and find something that they can afford. So they don't allow the student's desire for a particular school drive this process if they don't qualify for need-based aid. So today is a bad day for technical difficulty. I apologize. I'm going to have a edited version of these questions. Okay. So let's see. What forms do I need to get state financial aid? You need to Google the state aid programs for your state. So in California, for example, the high school counselors upload the GPA of students, and that plus a FAFSA is a complete financial aid application for state aid. In the state of New York, you complete the FAFSA, and they're going to use that to verify some data. And you also complete an application for state aid. So it will vary by your state. Each one's a little bit different. Some of them have very strict deadlines. I'm thinking of Illinois has a really interesting way of awarding the state aid, and that their deadlines tend to be earlier, and maybe that's the thing that runs out, right? So do I have to do it as soon as it opens? It'll depend, like I said. Where do I list my 529 plan, my student's 529 plan on the FAFSA? And this is a really good question. I get this every time I speak. I go around to high schools in the area, and I talk about the financial aid process, and this question comes up every single time. No other question comes up as much as this one. Now, here's the answer. My student's 529 plan is going to be listed as a parent asset. That's it. End of story. Why? Why is this relevant? Why is it important? Why become a question? Because I can own a 529. I'm the custodial parent, and I own a 529, and my daughter is the beneficiary. That's a parent asset. I can be the custodian of a 529, and my student is the owner. That's a student asset. When students own a 529, if the grandparent is the custodian and the student's the owner, it's going to be all listed as a parent asset. But if you have a student who is the beneficiary of a 529, but the 529 is owned by the grandparent, it's not going to be listed. How do I know? When you have a 529, it'll say adult, FBO, student. If you have a 529 that's owned by the student, it's going to say student, UGMA, UTMA, custodian, adult. When it's custodian, adult, that means the student owns it, and it's going to be listed on the student's, the parent's asset list on the 529, on the FAFSA. Now, why does this even matter? Because assets for a parent are assessed at 5.64% when they calculate what you need to contribute toward college. Assets on the student's side in a FAFSA are going to be assessed at 20%. So I've saved $100,000 in a 529, and I've also got $100,000 in savings. Each one of those assets would be assessed at 5.64%. So they would expect $5,640 for every $100,000 that I have to report. On a student, if a student had $100,000 savings in their name, because grandparents, whoever contributed, that asset is assessed at 20%. If a student has a 529 that they own, that everyone, the same sources contributed to, it's not assessed at 20%. It's assessed at 5.64, like the parent. So that's the difference in where listing these bits of information can be confusing and so important to know. So it's the difference between $20,000 being expected as a contribution of that asset versus $5,640. Means your money can last a little bit longer if you're having to pay for college, and it's the student's 529 and not the student's custodial account. Okay. And one other thing, I'm going to say it, assets owned by anyone other than the custodial parent or the student applying for financial aid do not have to be listed on the FAFSA at all. Okay. What expenses are covered and not covered by financial aid? This one was interesting for me because last week I got a call from someone that worked with me about 3 years ago. And what she told me, she was trying to figure out how she's going to pay for this, final year of college because she used up all the savings that she had for college for the student. 3 years ago, when she applied for financial aid, her EFC, which is what the SAI used to be called, was $17,000. And what she said was, oh, my EFC is 17, tuition is 6. Since it's more than the tuition, we're not getting any money. And she stopped right there and didn't pursue anything. But what she didn't understand was that financial aid is not just to cover the tuition. It's also meant to cover room and board, whether your student lives at home, on campus, or off campus. There's a line item to cover housing. It also covers books. It takes that into consideration. It takes transportation into consideration. It takes pocket money for the student into consideration. You can't send a student to 3 states away, 7 states away, with no money to speak of in their pocket for a semester, right? That's why pocket money is part of the cost. So all of those items are used to determine the cost of attendance, not just the tuition. And financial aid is awarded based on the total cost of attendance, not just tuition. So that's the important thing to know. Things like health insurance, which is required by most colleges. The student has to have health insurance, either through their parents or through the university's program. If your insurance is not adequate, if it doesn't meet up to the requirements of the college or the university, that's going to be an additional cost that you have to pick up. Some colleges do award some students a grant, a health insurance grant, to cover that cost. Other schools don't do that for anyone. Some schools do it for everyone. It just depends, right? So that's a cost that may or may not be covered. And then other costs that are not covered by financial aid are things like outfitting a dorm, dental insurance, dental bills, Greek organizations. So if your student wants to pledge a fraternity or sorority and they have additional costs, those are not going to be covered by financial aid. Something that I want to add that may or may not be covered or may be partially covered are computer fees, right? So if a student needs a specific laptop configured a certain way, that may be something that's configured as well or is offered grant money for, but not in all cases. So you need to know what's going to be expected of you in totality, not just, oh, I got to pay tuition and room and board. You want to think about all the other costs because they can add up as well. Okay. Let's see. I have 2 kids. Can I do just one form? Kind of is what it's going to be now. So it used to be on the FAFSA, if 2 kids in a family were submitting FAFSAs, the student would have to do a FAFSA and the parent would sign that one. And the second student would have to do a FAFSA and the parent would sign another one. Not anymore, because it's kind of siloed. So what's happening now is the student fills out their portion of the FAFSA, submits it. They've invited you, a custodial parent, to submit. You fill that out and you submit. And because of the way it's structured, my understanding now is student number 2 also is filling out their portion, but I don't have to sign a document twice. I've been invited, and each time it can get linked to the student. So my one submission is going to be linked to my 2 students. So that's a nice change. Ooh, okay, now we get to juicier ones. Okay, so my ex-spouse and I have 50-50 custody. Who fills out the financial aid form? Well, I always say to people, you have to dispense with uh, what you know about taxes and what you might know about divorce court or family court, any of that, because the rules are for that specific venue. There are financial aid rules. Financial aid, FAFSA, Department of Education, it doesn't matter in this process who the student lived with or who has 50-50 custody. What does matter, what is the trigger on who's the custodial parent, who's completing the form, is going to be the person who provided the majority of support, financial support to the student. Well, we got 50-50 legal and physical, but he pays me $300 a month. Odds are I'm providing more than 50% of the financial support to my student, right? Because I'm feeding them, I'm doing all these things, and maybe I've got them 51%. I don't know how much time. It's who's providing the majority of support. If I can't decide, if we go, no, we split everything straight down the middle, the Department of Education solution is who makes the most money, who has the most assets. Whoever has more financially is going to be determined as being the custodial parent. So you want to make that decision yourselves. You want to look at it realistically. If I'm getting $7,500 a month in child support, am I really the one providing more than 50%? Yes or no? It's harder to say, right? It might be still that it's 50-50, but maybe that person is doing more financially. I had a family and they said the parents were getting like $13 a month. Clearly, that parent is not going to be the custodial parent because the other person is providing way more in that scenario. Okay, here's another good one. I'm the custodial parent. I'm also remarried. My new spouse has lots more income and lots more assets than I. Can I just do the form without him or her? No. So that's your short answer, no. Why? Because the form requires, if I'm remarried, my spouse has to provide information on the form. So kind of it. It doesn't matter if I've got a prenup. It doesn't matter that we have an agreement that, he's going to pay for his kids and I'm going to pay for my kids. Irrelevant. What you would want to try to do is, if there's really a big discrepancy, what you might want to try to do is contact the college and ask them to not consider. Now, if you just got married 3 months ago, your odds of them reconsidering it could be good or fair. If you've been married for the last 15 years, no can do, Elroy. You're going to have to list the parent, and they're probably not going to accept that as a reason, an appeal that they're not his or her kids. There's a saying, in for a penny, in for a pound. So you marry not just the other person, but you become a unit and their family too. So the kids are part of that, lock, stock, and barrel. Okay. My students going out of the country. Is FAFSA worth doing? Maybe at some schools outside of the U.S., they will process FAFSA information and use it to evaluate a student. The Department of Education has certain programs. I think Pell Grant is one. The student loan might be another, where they will actually facilitate you receiving those types of funds at a foreign university if you're a U.S. citizen or resident, if you're eligible for FAFSA. Let's say it that way. Okay. I did the form and FAFSA didn't give me anything. Can I appeal to FAFSA? No, you cannot appeal to FAFSA. The reason you can't appeal to FAFSA is because it's really just a form. What you can do, though, if you want to try and you think you have a legitimate reason that someone should review your information, what you can do is appeal to the financial aid offices at the college where your student has applied, right? So FAFSA is just a form. Don't call that FAFSA helpline and say, I want to appeal. This doesn't make sense. They're just collecting the data, right? That's all the FAFSA is. It's a form to fill out, like a driver's license application, like a mortgage application, any application. It's just the form. You got to deal with the people that are distributing the funds. And who is that? It's going to be the college. The college distributes federal, state, and institutional aid. So that's who you would go to. What income is too much to bother with filling out the forms? There's no real good answer. If you make 600,000, you're not getting need-based aid. But I've seen people making 300 with larger family qualify for financial aid. I've seen people like a family of 3 at 215,000 qualifying for need-based aid. Whether you qualify for need-based aid is not just based on income, it's based on income and assets, size of family, lots of factors, right? But also, how much does it cost, the full cost, to attend the college or university of the student? So the family that I'm saying they made like 215, a family of 3, they're not qualifying for need-based aid at the state university, but they did at a more high-end private university. So it will depend on the list that the student has of where they're making their applications. Okay. Applying for financial aid, is it going to impact my student negatively in the student's admissions application? Doubtful. So I want to clear up a few things. The first is the most disadvantaged people in the college admissions process is going to be the student with minimal financial means, right? They're disadvantaged in the admissions process, and they're disadvantaged in for like maybe test scores and things, the quality of the schooling that they're receiving. But they also are the ones who are the most needy, and some schools, because of the way they're set up financially, can't afford to take a ton of those students. So the most important thing to be thinking about is when you are applying, when the student is applying for college, focus on target and safety schools. When you have reach admissions, I always tell people practically reach money. But when financial aid offices are putting financial aid awards together, if they are need aware, that means they are going to take into consideration how much money you need and their budget and where you are in terms of them filling out their class of freshmen. So here I am, a student with meager assets in my family, and I want to go to this $90,000 a year school, and I'm just barely in the running, based on their stats, and I need $81,000 to go here. The other, and I waited until my application is one of the last ones being read. And then I've got a student who is, comes from a middle-class family, and they're a reach student also, and they're one of the last ones to submit their application. A school's going to look at their budget and say, can we afford to bring this kid to campus? Some colleges do something called admit deny, where they'll admit the student, but they're not going to give you enough money to come. So which one's worse? Don't get accepted, or get accepted but not get enough money to come, and they know when they give it to you, it's not enough. The student who only needs $20,000, the school might say, you know what, this is a better fit for us here. We can't afford, because they've got a limited pool of money to spread around. Now, I'm a student and I still need 81,000, but I'm one of like the top caliber, because they're rating the students, right? They think I'm like A out of, 5 levels. I'm the top 20% of a student that they like. Okay, they're going to give me the money, odds are. So students are disadvantaged. Your kid didn't get rejected by a highly selective college or university because they applied for financial aid. People think that. They didn't. That's not why. It's not because they're not smart. It's not because of anything other than there's a really large pool of talented students applying at the same time. When I was little, we used to play musical chairs. Like, you go to a birthday party and we play musical chairs, right? 7 people walking around the chairs while the music's on, but there's only 6 chairs. And guess what? Only 6 people can sit down. So a lot of colleges and universities have not increased the number of students that they're accepting. They've just increased the number of students that they're rejecting. And it's not a comment on the student as a person, as a student, or anything else. And if you're a middle or upper middle income family, I want you to try to get that out of your mind, that if I apply for financial aid, my kid's going to be negatively impacted. No, not going to happen. In fact, I've seen some kids have it be a positive for them when a school finds out that they actually will have to pay full price. There's that. Okay. Man, I made it to the 3rd page. Let's see. Doesn't most financial aid have to be paid back? Not really, no, because financial aid gets divided into 2 pieces. Need-based is, there's gift money, and there's need-based self-help. Gift is great. We don't have to pay it back. Self-help, work study, I don't have to repay that. I just work and they pay me. Works good for me. The student loan, and I think I already said, but I've been live streaming all day, so I'm not 100% sure, but I may have already mentioned that the maximum federal student loan through the school awarded is $5,500 for a freshman. That's it. So I'm getting, I have a need, the school's meeting all my need. They're going to give me a bunch of grant money, probably some work study, and then they're tapping out at $5,500. Although a few schools may give another loan, but that's pretty much it. So I don't know who they or someone is, right? Who those people are that they are saying to me, oh, well, I'm not bothering because it's all loans. Not necessarily. It's unique to your personal financial situation and the college that your student is making the application for. Okay. The admissions application asks if we'll be applying for financial aid. Should I say no? Because this is another thing where people think, you know what, I'm going to say no now, and then I'll apply later. You might be too late to apply. I had a family that I worked with years ago. They said when they put on the application, no, we don't need money. The parent lost their job. And guess what? They wanted financial aid for freshman year. The college said, no can do. No can do. They said, you said you didn't need, so we made other arrangements, because they're on a limited budget. These aren't just, all of them are not just endless supplies of money. They have to stay in business year to year, first and foremost. So they said, you're welcome to apply next year when you're going into sophomore year, but you cannot apply for freshman year. We're not going to consider it. Eek. So don't say no. Just go with the flow. Go do the process. Someone told me if I don't claim my kid on my tax return, then they can be an independent student. Is that true? No, someone is wrong, right? They cannot be independent. To be independent, there's a few categories. The slam dunk reasons are your student's 24, your student is in the military, your student's a veteran from the military, your student is an orphan, your student has a dependent, a child or someone else that they are responsible for financially. Those are slam dunk reasons. Those are on the FAFSA. They ask you all those questions. When you check those, boom, it says you're independent. Just because I don't claim my kid on a tax return when they're 17 or 18, they're not independent, right? Some kids have really difficult family situations. They've been thrown out of their homes. They're homeless. They've been a ward of the court. These kinds of things, those are special or unusual circumstances. And in those cases, those kids often are allowed to be declared independent, but just, look, we're not qualifying for financial aid, so I'll just not claim you. No, not going to work. Not going to work. Okay. My income was lower in the prior year than my most recent tax return, but the FAFSA is using the prior year income information. Can I just put the newer income information on my form? No. You have to use the prior year tax information. So it's 2025. My kid's a senior right now. Then we're using 2023 income. But my 2024 is lower, and I'd rather use that because it's to my advantage. I'm just going to write in my 2024 information on the FAFSA. No. Do not pass go. You cannot do that. But what you could do is you could appeal. You could contact the colleges and say, hey, you know what? You guys got my 2023 income, but I lost my job, or I had to take a pay cut. My income is not the same as what it was before. So can you review this and adjust the financial aid award? That's acceptable. That you can do. But you can't just on your own decide, I know you want what you want, but this is what I want to do. Not going to be okay. Okay. When do we get the financial aid offer? The financial aid award? Well, it varies, but most kids are getting their admissions acceptances mid-March, early April. And if that's when you get your announcement, when you find out you've been accepted at the school, if you have submitted the paperwork on time, very quickly after, you will get a financial aid award. It might be mailed to you. I don't think they do that as much anymore. Most of the time, it's going to be on the student's portal with the university. And you can log in and see what's been offered for you. A few months ago, maybe early March or April of last year, I did a live stream about financial aid awards and how to read them. That might be something you want to revisit. I'm sure I'm going to talk about that again this coming March or April so that people can understand what's being provided to them, because some of them can be kind of confusing. Okay. My grandchild lives with me, or my nephew lives with me, my niece, I'm the aunt, I'm the grandparent. Do I have to share my financial information on the FAFSA and other aid forms? No. The only time a grandparent or an aunt, an uncle, someone else is sharing information on the FAFSA is if they have legally adopted them. You being their legal guardian, no, not mattering here. You are not going to provide your information unless you have legally adopted that child. Okay. What's the difference between using an SAI calculator and a college's net price calculator? I didn't get to this one in the other live streams, so I'm glad I'm here. The difference is an SAI calculator is a constant number that you can carry from school to school to school, and you can evaluate schools in bulk. The net price calculator is unique to the school. It's going to tell you what it's going to come to what it's going to cost to come to my school specifically, but you don't know why. It's kind of more black box information, right? So the difference is I might find out that for ABC University, my SAI is $30,000. Now, what I know, if I'm doing a big glance across the landscape, any school that costs less than 30,000 is going to mean I'm not qualified for need-based financial aid at those schools. I might decide, oh, I can't afford my SAI, so I want something below. Boom, that's my crop. That's my group of schools to evaluate. If it's, I look at another college and they tell me my net price, my price for them is 30,000. It means my price for them is 30. It doesn't mean that I do or don't qualify. I can't tell based on that information if I'm likely to qualify at a different school. And the SAI is a better number for beginning the process, as opposed to, depends actually, as opposed to looking at, my student is looking at 50 schools. Am I doing the net price calculator for 50 schools? Or do I want to know my SAI as my first line of evaluation? That way I know my SAI is 30. Wow, my at all of these schools that that use this formula, all of these are going to be good for me or not. Where the other one, I'm looking and that's my price for that school. And when I switch to the next school, it may or may not be the same. So it's a different way of evaluating information. Some colleges just threw up a net price calculator. That's not very good. They didn't want to. The government said you had to. And they're like, you know what? Hey, look, just use this one. And it doesn't even reflect how they award money. Then it really is useless, right? There are better ways to get information, or there are just as good ways, or there are streamlined ways of getting that kind of information. All right. Wow. I have no clue where to start or what to do. What do you suggest to focus my energy in the right direction if I have a senior? If you have a senior, got to have the financial aid form done, right? I'm only talking financial side. Got to have the financial aid form. Got to keep track if there's any additional information that people want. So did they also want, besides the FAFSA, the CSS profile? If so, do they want additional documents from me, like a tax return, W-2s, 1099s? How do they want them? Where do they want them? When do I have to give them to them, right? Keep a lookout. Have your student, because they're going to be emailing the student. Have your students stay on the lookout for emails, right? Pay attention. If you get an email from the school, what do they want? And get it to them quickly. I had a student who got accepted to a college. She's done her FAFSA, and then she got an email that said, hey, we need you to log on and fill out this form. Pay attention. That's what's next for you. And if you think you want to be trying to get private scholarships, now's the time to do that as well. You want to be applying right now, because January, February, March are going to be prime months for applying for private scholarships. And by the time the admissions offers start coming, the number of financial of opportunities for private scholarships is going to slowly dwindle to close to nothing by May 1st. If you have a junior, you want to figure out what you can afford to pay, and you want to know your SAIs, plural. You can have more than one index, more than one number on how much you're expected to contribute. Those are the first things you want to do. Then you want to, and let me see if I have it on this page. I think I do. You want to determine what your aid type is. There's more than just need-based financial aid out there. And if you find out that you don't qualify for need-based aid, do you want to continue down the path of looking for need-based aid that you're not going to get? Or do you want to focus your time and energy on private scholarship search or colleges that will give your student money independent of your need? So you need to know what aid type you're most likely to obtain. And then you want to align yourself with the aid policies of a college. So my college doesn't award merit money. There are lots of colleges that don't award merit money. Amherst College doesn't have merit money. Tufts, they have $1,000 a year for national merit finalists, right? $1,000. Other than that, unless you're a merit scholar, a national merit scholar, you're not getting merit. And guess what? I don't qualify for merit, but I need help paying the bill. That's not going to be a good match for me. And I need to start curating a list of colleges that are going to be in my budget. That's what's most important. So earlier, I said there's a question always of what are other families doing? If you want to get through this process and come out with your shirt, right? The thing to do is what I'm telling you right here. Now, it's January. Start figuring out this stuff. You don't have any more time. You're going to blink and it's going to be summer. You're going to blink again and it's going to be December, right? So what kind of aid am I most likely to obtain? If I don't qualify and I can manage the bill, no problem. Have at it. Pick wherever you want to go. But if cost is a concern, and it is for most families, if cost is a concern, if getting a really good school is a concern, then you need to know what kind of aid you're most likely to be able to get, what schools award the kind of money that you're most likely to get, and you want to build a college list that is a good school for your student socially, academically, and financially a good fit. It's going to take time to make that list. So you need to do this sooner than later. Okay, so I hope you got a lot out of these questions. I don't know if anybody's got questions of their own that they want to ask, but if you do, now is the time to put them in the chat. And if not, I'm going to introduce you to two things. One is a free download. Join my mailing list. We're going to be sending out information to help you understand how to navigate your way through this process. Don't want to miss out on being in this mailing list. The other thing I would say is, please do me a favor. If you liked this, follow me on social media. I would appreciate it, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And subscribe to the YouTube channel because I'm going to be doing this every month. You can get a notification without the email, so you know when we're going to do the next thing. And the next thing, the next College Aid Night at Noon live stream, February 13th. that's when we'll be here again. And I've got some more, I'm going to go more into detail about that last question that I talked about. When you have a junior, especially, I think I might have a person talk about testing as well. So join me. And if not, thank you so much. I hope you were able to grab a little bite to eat and listen to me, and that you got something out of these questions that I shared. Have a good rest of the